Hey everyone, Johnny Freedom here. Wanted to talk about something today, as you can see from the title of the video. Um, you know, the title about remaking movies as opposed to the economy. So, I want you to think about this for a second. When producers and directors decide to remake a movie, when they do remakes, typically, almost 100% of the time, they don't remake the endings or the plot or anything like that. They might change some details within it, but they don't actually change the story and the ending because then it wouldn't really be a remake. I want you to think about this in terms of the economy and what's going on today in basically in the world, not just the U.S. And what I mean by that is, let's take the movie RoboCop for example. So I just recently saw the RoboCop remake. I know it's been out for a couple years, but I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to remakes. All those movies from my youth and everything, I just get mad when they remake them. But I finally saw it. It was kind of cool. I just wanted to see it because it looked like it had some cool special effects. So if you watch that movie and you watch the original RoboCop, obviously you could argue that the details within the story changed. That it was much more futuristic in this new one. A lot of the people were different. Some of the plot was a little bit different, but the outcome, I mean, the basic premise of the story, the guy gets killed. In the first RoboCop, he gets shot by like 5 guys in a warehouse, and then they turn him into a robot. In this new one, a car bomb blows up, and that's how he gets to become RoboCop. But again, so the details are different, but the story is exactly the same. A cop gets almost, he's near death. He gets put into this program, and it becomes, a robot, half man police. Well, the economy is no different. I keep seeing articles and watching videos of people saying that everything's fine, the economy's recovering, and that everything is just, sunshine and kittens. But again, if you think about this, what I'm saying to you now in terms of what we just talked about with the RoboCop, we've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. Again, the details are changing. Some of the minute details within it are changing, but the ending and the plot, it's going to be the same. So what happened, and let me just give you a brief example of what I'm talking about. So basically, from about 2002, 2003 to roughly around 2007, 2008, we had a huge housing bubble in the U.S. Nobody argues that. It's all, hindsight, of course. Everyone now says, oh my God, prices were way too high. Homes were on the market for a few hours. I mean, if you tried to sell your house and it was on the market for more than a couple of days, like, there had to be something seriously wrong with your house. So that all went down, and then everything collapsed, almost collapsed the whole world economy. The financial system was crashing and everything like that. So what caused that? Well, I'm not going to go into the exact details. I'll make another video at some point on what exactly caused the financial crisis and the housing bust. But essentially, we can just say at least low interest rates and lax lending standards. That's basically what did it. Banks failed to do their primary job. A bank's primary job is lending, and they failed to do that. They failed to have strict lending standards, and interest rates were really super artificially low. Now I want you to think about that, and then think about today. Well, are interest rates higher or lower than they were when the housing bubble went through the first time? They're lower. So how it's even cheaper to borrow money than it was back in 2005 and 6. Interest rates were at 1% back then. They're at 0 now. The same thing is happening again. All of a sudden, homes have shot up in value again. It has nothing to do with the fundamentals at all. It's not like, your house, suddenly you did a ton of stuff to it, and you added an extra bedroom, and you put another story on your house, something that would justify your house going up $100,000 or something like that. And I'll give you an example. I had 2 properties that I finally sold. I bought one when the housing market crashed, and then I bought one while it was still going on. So the first house I kind of got screwed on. The second house made up for it because I got it at a huge, huge discount. Um, Now, the first one, when the housing market tanked, the value went down. It lost almost, if I remember correctly, at its peak, it lost, I think it was down about $70,000. I finally sold that house about 6 months ago. It took me this long just for it to get back to even, but it went up in value $60,000 to break even, but I didn't do anything worth $60,000. The reason house prices go up in a normal environment, the non-manipulated environment that we live in a normal environment, is supply and demand. But if that supply and demand is artificial, then the home value increases must be artificial too. It's not that a ton of people are buying houses, regular, everyday, ordinary Joes. They're not the ones buying houses. If that was the case, then there would be justification for prices going up because everybody and their brother is trying to get a house and there aren't any there. Now that's happening, but that's not because of you and I, the general public, doing it. The only reason that's happening is because interest rates are far lower than they were the first time, and basically what's happening now, instead of flipping, that was a big cause of a lot of home prices going up, was the flipping. There's not a whole lot of flipping going on right now. Very, very little of all homeowner transactions are flips. They're all purchases by banks and hedge funds and investment companies, and they're turning those homes into rentals. So the supply is being dwindled by these people, and the demand is going up again. So when the supply falls and demand rises, prices go up. But it's not because of true fundamentals. If true fundamentals were actually at play here, prices would be much lower. And the government keeps arguing that they want to make homes affordable to people. But yet, what is the best way for homes to become affordable, or for anything? Forget homes for a second. For anything to become affordable. Prices go down. You know, it's not a coincidence that when there's a sale at a store, you see more people there. Or when, if Walmart has some kind of sale, or Macy's, or, when the grocery store advertises that they're having like 10 for $10 sales. I mean, it's not a coincidence that people go up and stock up. People like low prices. Well, housing is no different. If they really wanted to make homes affordable to people, they would let the prices fall. Now, it's going to happen, again. Instead of it happening naturally through a free market system, it's going to happen again just like it did a couple of years ago. Because again, like I said, we are replaying the same movie that we just went through about 10 years ago. It's just this time the details are a little bit different, but the ending is going to be the same. Just like in RoboCop, you can change all the innards of the movie, but the plot and the ending is still the same. That is exactly what's going on here. So we're going to run into the same thing again. When home prices fall, people are going to be defaulting on their mortgages. They're going to be left holding the bag, and there's not going to be any help for them. I recently wrote an article basically saying that anyone who's bought a house in the last, 7 years is in for a rude awakening, unless you got one at a huge discount, like I did way back when. Now, anybody who's paying market price for homes, I hate to say it, but they're suckers. Now, if you were lucky enough to find a house that maybe was, somebody had abandoned it, it was trashed, and the bank gave you like a really good deal, like maybe homes in that area were selling for around $250, and maybe you got yours for, $150. I mean, that's a good deal. You probably won't be that affected. Your home value is going to fall, but you probably won't be underwater. I mean, there was in the neighborhood I used to live in, there was a home across the street that was abandoned. I think it had been abandoned for about 2 years. And the place was trashed. The cops were always going over there because a lot of homeless people were squatting in there, living in there, and it sucked because it was right across the street from my house, and I have a little boy, and I don't like vagrants hanging out in my neighborhood. The lawn was so high. I used to go over there once a month just to trim the weed, take my weed whacker over there and just trim the front lawn, just so it looked like someone was living there. Because I mean, if you didn't, and none of the neighbors cared. I was so surprised that people who lived next to them on both sides, they never did nothing. They never trimmed anything, like they didn't care. Well, I just wanted it to look like somebody lived there, so maybe the vagrants would stop. Well, finally, someone bought that house. Not a couple. I remember seeing a lot of couples looking at it, but basically, I never got a chance to go inside. But I did talk to one of the cops one time that got called over there, and he basically told me that the only thing left inside the house was just a frame and a roof. I mean, every single wall had been, kicked through. All the light fixtures were stolen. All the fixtures in the house were stolen. Sinks, toilets, everything. I mean, they even went up on the roof, stole all the copper out of the air conditioning unit. So I watched this house from the time the investor bought it. I think he bought it, I want to say he paid like $120,000 for that house. Not really worth that to me, but pretty decent deal considering the houses in the neighborhood were selling in the twos. Now, in order to get that house livable, there was a lot of money that needed to be spent in there. But so he bought it, and I watched him do the transformation. He put a new roof on, he put everything on, new flooring, carpets, AC, everything. The house was basically brand new, except for the frame. Basically every single thing in that house got replaced except for the frame. Now, when all was said and done, he put it on the market. Before I put my house on the market, he put his house on the market. He was trying to sell that house for $270,000. I mean, well over 100% profit he was trying to make on that. Now, I don't know how much he spent on it, but I know he spent a lot trying to get it ready. But it sat there, a ton of people looked at it, no offers, nothing. To my knowledge, it's still for sale. That was in, I want to say, November, I think, of last year he put that house on the market. No one is buying it because it is way overpriced. Now, he's going to be in for a rude awakening. Now, if you were able to get a house like that, the average ordinary person is not buying a home to flip it. If you were able to get a house like that for dirt cheap, and you fix it up over time, you at least make it livable, but you don't have to put fancy marble tile down and everything, you at least make it livable, then you could say, you got a good deal. But prices right now are just simply outrageous. A one-story house in the neighborhood that I sold my other house in, a one-story house is now selling for more than my two-story house sold for about almost 2 years ago. I had twice the square footage, more bedrooms, more land than this other person. Now, this other person's house is selling for the same that my two-story house sold for. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if you just sit back and think, it's not going to work out. We know how this movie ends. It's not going to end well. You have to think about it. I was looking at a house, or houses I should say. After I sold my two, I'm renting now. And I'm going to continue to rent. I looked at some houses when we first sold our house, and the prices are just ridiculous. Ridiculously overpriced. I mean, people are paying, again, they're about the prices are back to, bubble levels. And it's insane. And anyone who thinks that this is going to keep going on forever is in for a rude awakening. And it sucks because, I know nobody deserves to have the rug pulled out from under them, but if you don't have any common sense to think about that, then, I mean, there has to be some accountability somewhere. And next time, when this happens, which I think is coming in the near future, probably in either this year or next year, the federal government is not going to be able to do anything this time. They've already done everything they can. We've had 4 rounds of quantitative easing. Interest rates are at 0, and that's supposed to spur the economy. We're barely getting any growth now. We basically are having negative growth. So what are they going to do next time? There's nothing more they can do. So everybody keeps asking me, what's my advice? Well, my advice is to stay out of the housing market. Rent. Wait for prices to fall again, and then get your good deal, because they're going to be out there. You know, people say, oh, well, you know, renting, you're throwing your money away. Well, no, you're not. You need a place to live. So it's not throwing money away. You decide where you want to spend your money. A house is not an investment, especially if it loses value. People buy losing value investments all the time. Every time you buy a brand new car, you know right off the bat that that car is never going to be worth what you just paid for it, nor will it ever be higher. It'll always be lower, unless you sell it on the private market and you do some upgrades to it or something. But you know, in the fair market value, you're never ever going to get what you paid for it. So I just want you to keep that in mind. If you don't own a home now, or you're thinking of buying one, my advice is not to. Wait it out. The deals are going to be there. The housing market is going to collapse again. You know, just like I said in the beginning, just because you remake a movie, you don't change the ending. Just imagine what would happen if they remade Rocky, but only this time, you know, Rocky loses all of his fights. Every single one. He doesn't become champ. You know, he loses every single fight. Now, again, part 1, yes, I know he lost that one. But let's just assume that they remake all the Rockies, and in part 1 he wins, and then all the other subsequent stories have to be different. So just imagine he wins the first one and loses all the rest of them. That wouldn't be a very good movie, because it wouldn't be what you know. Just like this one, it's not going to work. Printing money only increases prices. It makes them rise. Prices are not rising because things are more valuable. It's because your money is worth less. That's why it's rising. So, I appreciate any comments below. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at DefendFreedom76. And you can find me on Facebook at Defending Freedom and Liberty. Take care, guys. Any comments appreciated.